And forget Harry's speech, which is not millions, it's around about £42,000 in our money. A lot of money, a hell of a lot of money, just to hear somebody talk about their mental health journey.
£42,000. That is the number Netflix executives reportedly saw when they reviewed what Prince Harry could command for a single speech in Australia. And according to people close to the situation, the reaction in the room was something between stunned silence and quiet resignation. Not stunned because the figure was impressive, but because it represented how far the Sussex brand had fallen from those heady days of $100 million deals and breathless press releases about their content empire. Let me put this in perspective for you. £42,000 sounds like serious money, and for most of us, it absolutely is. But when you are maintaining a lifestyle that reportedly costs around $5 million annually, when you are paying for a Montecito mansion, round-the-clock security, a rotating staff of publicists and assistants, that speaking fee represents roughly 3 days of their monthly burn rate. The math simply does not work, and the people who watch celebrity finances for a living have started saying what many of us have suspected for months now. The Sussex operation is in trouble, and this Australian trip might be less a triumphant return than a desperate gamble to find new sources of income where the American well has run dry. What makes this moment so revealing is not just the number itself, but what it tells us about the trajectory of their post-royal career. We have watched the Netflix deal crumble. We have seen the Spotify partnership end in what insiders described as mutual frustration. The wellness brand that was supposed to make Meghan a lifestyle mogul has generated headlines about inflated sales figures rather than actual profits. And now here they are, bringing their own camera crew to Australia because no major platform wants to foot the bill anymore. But to understand how we arrived at this particular moment, we need to go back several months, to when the Netflix money reportedly stopped flowing entirely, and the Sussex team realized their content partnership was basically over, long before any official announcement was made. The story that has emerged from people with direct knowledge of the Netflix relationship paints a picture considerably less flattering than the carefully worded press releases would suggest. According to a source who spoke candidly about the arrangement, the $100 million deal that made headlines around the world was never actually a $100 million deal. The real figure was heavily lower, and much of even that reduced amount was contingent on deliverables that never materialized. The money reportedly stopped flowing around late October, roughly 4 months before the Christmas special aired. By that point, Netflix executives had already watched the rough cuts and reached a unanimous conclusion. This was it. There was nothing more coming that would justify continued investment. The holiday special represented the endpoint of whatever creative partnership had existed, and everyone on the production side understood the writing on the wall. One insider described the executive reaction to the finished content with a phrase that has since become something of an inside joke among media industry observers. Is this it? That was apparently the question hanging in the room when decision makers reviewed what the Sussex production team had delivered. The expectation had been exclusive access, compelling storytelling, the kind of intimate royal content that audiences could not get anywhere else. What they received instead was, according to multiple accounts, polished but ultimately hollow material that failed to generate the sustained engagement Netflix requires from its premium partnerships. The streaming giant has been diplomatic in public statements, citing creative direction differences and suggesting the partnership had simply run its natural course. But privately, the frustration is palpable. Netflix only ever wanted two things from this relationship, and those close to the negotiation process have been remarkably consistent on this point. They wanted royal dirt, the unvarnished inside story of palace dysfunction and family conflict. They got that with the initial documentary, which delivered strong viewership numbers precisely because it promised explosive revelations. The other thing they wanted was a reconciliation. Cameras present as Harry reunited with his family, the redemption arc that would generate even bigger numbers than the original scandal. Neither option remains viable. The dirt has been exhausted, recycled so many times that audiences have stopped caring. The reconciliation shows no signs of happening, and with each passing month of estrangement, the prospect grows more remote. Without fresh controversy or a heartwarming family reunion, Netflix found itself asking a question that apparently no one in the Sussex camp could answer satisfactorily. What exactly are we paying for? What confirms the severity of the Netflix situation more than any official statement is what Harry and Meghan are doing doing in Australia. They are bringing their own videographer, paying for their own production crew, creating content on spec without any guaranteed buyer lined up to purchase it. This represents a complete reversal from the flush early days of their California exile, when major platforms competed for their attention and production budgets seemed unlimited. The strategy mirrors something Michael Jackson tried decades ago with Martin Bashir. After feeling betrayed by how documentary footage was edited and presented, Jackson began filming his own interactions to control the narrative and provide counter-evidence if needed. Harry and Meghan appear to be adopting a similar approach, ensuring that whatever happens in Australia, they will have their own footage to tell their version of events. But there is an important difference between Jackson's situation and theirs. Jackson was still one of the biggest stars in the world when he deployed this tactic. The Sussexes are filming themselves because no one else is willing to pay for the privilege anymore. The desperate hope, according to people familiar with their planning, is that an Australian network might purchase what American platforms will not touch. The calculation seems to be that Australian audiences, who received the couple warmly during their 2018 royal tour, might represent untapped commercial potential. Perhaps a local broadcaster will see value in Sussex content that Netflix and other American streamers have rejected. This represents a major step down from where they positioned themselves just a few years ago. The couple who once commanded meetings with the most powerful executives in entertainment are now basically creating demo reels, hoping someone will bite. The production quality will undoubtedly be professional. They have the resources for that, at least for now. But the fundamental active has shifted from sought-after content creators to people pitching their product to anyone who might be interested. When you examine the numbers carefully, the financial picture becomes increasingly difficult to reconcile with their apparent lifestyle. That £42,000 speaking fee, while large, represents a single event. Reports have emerged about wellness weekend appearances that could be lucrative but certainly not generating millions. Even if Harry delivered one speech per week at that rate, which no speaker does, the annual total would still fall short of their reported expenses. The security costs alone are staggering. Some estimates suggest they spend over $1 million annually just on protection, a figure that becomes especially painful when you remember that Harry is simultaneously pursuing legal action, demanding the British government provide this service free of charge. The Montecito property carries a major mortgage. Staff salaries for their various operations reportedly run into hundreds of thousands. Their charitable foundation, while generating positive headlines, requires large administrative overhead. $5 million minimum. That is the figure multiple analysts have suggested as the baseline for sustaining their current lifestyle, and the income streams visible to outside observers simply do not add up to that number. Book residuals help but diminish over time. Speaking fees are sporadic. The Netflix money has stopped. Spotify is gone. The lifestyle brand generates more controversy than confirmed revenue. I have been saying this for a long time now, and nothing has convinced me otherwise. The Sussex brand exists in a peculiar limbo, simultaneously too controversial for many mainstream commercial partnerships, and too dependent on controversy to build the kind of warm, fuzzy lifestyle empire Meghan apparently envisions. Every business deal, every event appearance, every product launch leads with the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. That title is the entire brand. Strip it away and they are just another celebrity couple in Montecito, notable mainly for family drama rather than any particular accomplishment. Stories began circulating earlier this year claiming Meghan had made $30 million from jam sales. The figure was so absurd that industry observers initially assumed it was satire. Even the biggest jam manufacturer in the world does not generate that kind of profit margin. The entire premium preserves market barely supports those numbers from all producers combined. Yet somehow, this claim made it into print, attributed to Sussex-adjacent sources. The problem with pushing inflated figures to media outlets is twofold. First, it creates expectations that reality cannot possibly meet, making the eventual truth seem like failure even if actual performance was respectable. Second, and more seriously, it attracts exactly the kind of attention no one wants from regulatory authorities and tax investigators. When a company claims massive revenues that cannot be verified, people start asking uncomfortable questions. According to those familiar with the Netflix negotiation process, no actual figures were ever presented to back up projections about the lifestyle brand potential. The Bloomberg interview that was supposed to showcase Meghan as a serious businesswoman especially avoided any specific numbers about sales, distribution, or growth projections. This reticence made potential investors and partners nervous rather than intrigued. The As Ever brand may ultimately find some commercial success, but the strategy of generating headlines about fictional sales figures creates problems rather than solutions. It undermines credibility with exactly the sophisticated investors and partners who might otherwise be interested. It generates skeptical coverage rather than enthusiastic endorsement. And it suggests a fundamental misunderstanding of how modern brand building actually works. where transparency and authenticity typically prove more valuable than hype. The departure of Meredith Mayne from the Sussex public relations operation tells a story that official statements carefully avoided explaining. Mayne was not some junior staffer cycling through the notoriously difficult Sussex employment environment. She was the big cheese, as one observer put it, a highly credentialed professional with a track record of managing complex celebrity clients. Her sudden exit raised immediate questions about what had gone wrong. The answer, according to people with knowledge of the situation, traces back to the Kim Kardashian party controversy and the lies told in its aftermath. Harry and Meghan had attended a high-profile Hollywood event, and when photographs emerged that apparently did not match the image they wanted to project, the couple reportedly claimed they had signed some kind of form indicating photos should not be shared. This explanation was provided to People magazine, the Sussex-friendly outlet that has served as something of a house organ for their narrative. The problem was simple. No such form existed. There was no box to tick, no opt-out mechanism for guests at a major Hollywood party. Everyone in the industry knew this. The hosts knew it, the publicists knew it, and when the claim was investigated even cursorily, it fell apart immediately. What makes this incident particularly revealing is the reported internal active. Harry allegedly told staff about the form, passed this information to Mayne, who then found herself professionally compromised when the claim proved false. When confronted with the discrepancy, Meghan apparently disappeared, leaving Harry to face the consequences. Staff members who witness similar patterns describe a consistent cycle. A problematic statement is made, Meghan vanishes when accountability arrives, Harry absorbs the backlash, and eventually, whoever was caught in the middle finds the situation untenable and departs. For a public relations professional, credibility is everything. Once you have been associated with demonstrably false claims, your value to future clients diminishes dramatically. High-profile PR representatives walking away from lucrative Sussex contracts sends a signal that should worry anyone invested in the couple's success. These are people whose entire business depends on managing reputation, and they are concluding that some reputations cannot be managed. The cameo consideration represents perhaps the starkest indication of how far Sussex commercial ambitions have fallen from their original positioning. According to reports, the team has explored paid personal video messages tied to the As Ever brand. The concept would work similarly to the Cameo platform, where celebrities record personalized greetings for paying customers. To understand why this represents such a dramatic shift, consider what the Sussex brand was supposed to be. They were going to be above the traditional celebrity hustle, positioned as humanitarian figures using their platform for meaningful causes, rather than commercial endorsement. They would command premium partnerships with global corporations, speak at elite gatherings, influence policy discussions at the highest levels. Personal video messages for a fee represent the opposite end of the celebrity spectrum. It is what actors from canceled television shows do to supplement their income. It is how former reality stars monetize their remaining recognition. Major stars can generate major revenue through these platforms, but they do so precisely because they are understood to be celebrities, not humanitarian figures with world-changing ambitions. The Australia trip is reportedly being used partly as a test case for this approach. Will people pay for selfies? Is there an appetite for paid meet and greet opportunities? Can enough interest be generated to make this a viable income stream? These are questions that would have seemed unthinkable just 3 years ago, when the Sussex brand commanded respect, or at least attention, from the most powerful media companies in the world. If this direction proves necessary for their financial survival, it will work. Plenty of famous people sustain comfortable lives through exactly this kind of direct fan engagement, but it requires abandoning any pretense to the raised status they have so insistently claimed since leaving royal duties. Questions have begun emerging about the Invictus games that Harry clearly did not anticipate and almost certainly does not welcome. The scrutiny focuses on costs, specifically how much Harry and Meghan's involvement actually drains from resources that could otherwise support wounded veterans, private jets for the couple's travel, 5-star hotel accommodations, makeup artists and stylists, the apparatus of celebrity that accompanies them wherever they go. The timing could hardly be worse. Birmingham 2027 is approaching, with the official launch scheduled for later this year. This should be a moment of celebration and anticipation. Instead, it risks becoming an opportunity for uncomfortable questions about whether Invictus has evolved from a veterans charity into a Sussex lifestyle subsidy. A recent video of Harry promoting the games illustrated the problem perfectly. He stood in a doorway, looking, according to one observer, like an afterthought rather than a passionate advocate. No merchandise visible, no proper branding elements, nothing to suggest this cause occupies the central place in his life that public statements claim. Compare this to appearances at NFL games or other celebrity events where Sussex branded merchandise appears prominently and engagement seems enthusiastic rather than obligatory. People close to the Invictus organization have expressed private concerns about sustainability. If the primary public face of the charity generates more negative coverage than positive, at what point does his involvement become a liability rather than an asset? The veterans the games are meant to serve deserve better than becoming collateral damage in Sussex public relations battles. Within palace circles, attention has turned to a troubling historical parallel that becomes more apt with each passing month. King Charles reportedly does not want more mouths to feed, a diplomatic way of expressing concern that Harry might eventually need financial support from the family he has spent years publicly attacking. The Andrew comparison haunts palace strategists. The Duke of York sits effectively exiled in a royal-adjacent property, his reputation destroyed, his commercial prospects non-existent, entirely dependent on family resources for his survival. Every indication suggests Charles finds this situation distasteful but unavoidable, the price of maintaining some family cohesion while managing public perception. The fear, expressed privately by multiple palace insiders, is that Harry represents Andrew's future in a younger, more media-savvy package. He has burned through his initial commercial opportunities, his brand has become toxic to major partners, his expenses reportedly exceed his reliable income, and unlike Andrew, who at least maintains some relationship with the institution that supports him, Harry has positioned himself as an antagonist to the very family that might eventually need to bail him out. People close to the situation describe Charles watching the Archewell shambles with growing concern, not schadenfreude, not satisfaction at his son's difficulties, but genuine worry about where this trajectory leads. The prospect of Harry returning cap in hand asking for money is, according to one source, not too far off. For a king already dealing with his own health challenges and the ongoing Andrew situation, this represents exactly the kind of problem he hoped to avoid when initially supporting Harry's desire for an independent life. What makes Harry's situation particularly poignant is the growing evidence that he, unlike Meghan, actually perceives the danger they are in. He is reportedly rocked to the core watching Andrew's downfall, understanding viscerally what happens to a royal prince who loses the protection of the institution and finds himself adrift in a hostile world. The Duke and Duchess of Windsor parallel has been made before, but it grows more accurate with each passing month. Edward VIII gave up his throne for the woman he loved, spent decades in gilded exile, and ultimately became a figure of pity rather than admiration, dependent on family allowances, and forever looking back at the life he abandoned. Harry appears increasingly trapped in a similar pattern, unable to return to royal life, but equally unable to build the independent empire that was supposed to justify his departure. Unlike Meghan, who reportedly believes she can plow on regardless of setbacks, Harry understands what losing titles would actually mean. The Sussex commercial operation runs entirely on royal connection. Every speaking engagement, every partnership opportunity, every media appearance derives value from Harry's position as a prince of the blood and his wife's status as a duchess. Remove those titles, which both of them should have been stripped of the moment they started selling royal stories for profit, and the entire edifice collapses. The lifestyle he refuses to downsize requires income he can no longer reliably generate. This is the fundamental problem that no amount of jam sales or wellness weekends can solve. And Harry, whatever his other limitations, appears to grasp this reality in a way that his wife perhaps does not or cannot. Australia represents the last best hope for a Sussex narrative reset, and the strategy is already becoming clear from their pre-trip positioning. They will lean heavily into nostalgia for the 2018 Royal Tour, when they were genuinely popular and the pregnancy announcement generated warm global coverage. They will frame this visit as a love letter to Australia, a return to a country that embraced them before the difficulties began. There may even be hints about relocation, suggestions that Australia could become their new home base. This serves multiple purposes. It generates headlines and speculation. It positions them as people with options rather than refugees from a failed American adventure. And it provides cover for what is basically a commercial scouting mission, testing whether Australian media companies and sponsors might offer opportunities that American platforms have withdrawn. But Australia remembers more than the Sussex camp might wish. Reports from the first tour described tea-throwing incidents, diva demands, staff complaints that were suppressed at the time but have since leaked into public awareness. The carefully curated image of that visit has eroded considerably as insiders shared their actual experiences. My prediction, and I will state it plainly because I have always maintained that honest assessment serves audiences better than diplomatic hedging, is that this Australian tour will generate plenty of headlines but no large commercial deals. The fundamental problem remains unchanged by geography. Harry and Meghan are selling a product that major buyers no longer want. Moving the sales pitch to a different continent does not alter the underlying market dynamics. Within 18 months, we will see either a dramatic pivot in their approach, probably involving some kind of reconciliation gesture toward the royal family, or a quiet acknowledgement that independent sustainability has proven impossible. The financial runway is not unlimited. The commercial opportunities are not materializing, and the lifestyle costs continue regardless of what income streams develop. The £42,000 speaking fee tells the whole story in a single number. It is good money, but it is not enough. It never will be enough. Not for the life they have constructed and seem unwilling to modify. Something will have to give, and the only real question is whether they recognize this reality in time to manage the transition gracefully, or whether they continue insisting on their commercial viability until external circumstances force a more painful reckoning. What do you think about all this? Let me know in the comments and make sure you are subscribed so you do not miss the next one.